Boyle is a partner and founding team member of IDEO. He helps lead the design for health domain at IDEO, which is a side of the business that works with clients in the medical and consumer healthcare industries to develop innovative products, services, and strategies for, for treating disease and promoting healthy living. Dennis is also a consulting assistant professor at Stanford's D School, where he's taught courses on product design, engineering design, and human factors design, as well as design for sustainability and creativity and innovation. So with so many engineers looking to solve big problems, it's easy to believe that if I build it, people will use it. Dennis Boyle will be talking about the importance of combining human factors with technology and designing products with people in mind. So can everyone give a warm round of applause for Dennis Boyle?
All right, now I know how I'm feeling. I'm feeling sparked. All right. Thank you, Gina. So my talk today is design thinking used in the developing world and enabling entrepreneurs. So design thinking, what is it? It's a fundamentally human-centered approach to innovation. It's a balancing act between people factors, business factors, and technical factors. But what's desirable, what's viable, okay, and what's feasible. But what we find over the years at IDEO and beyond is design thinking works best if you start with the people factors. Start with what's desirable, what people need. And that's where innovation comes. And then focus on understanding people's needs on different levels from different lenses. This process has three main buckets: inspiration, ideation, and implementation. And the thing that it seems to be forgotten more often than not is becoming inspired. A lot of the stories today and a lot of the talks have been around this, but you have to walk a mile in your user's shoes. You have to observe and understand and immerse yourself in what people need. So at IDEO, we've gotten to be known for doing the early and the first of many things, like the first computer mouse and the first laptop and some of the very first handhelds and the first cameras on things you hold in your hands and the first AED, and there's a big long list. That's just a few things. Now it's also encompassed brand new experiences in the Walgreens pharmacy, or the upper right is what's the experience in a Converse branded store, or the lower left is what's the experience in the North Face in China, or the lower right is what's the experience in the St. Joseph healthcare system for delivering sacred care to their patients. But all these are kind of first world problems, and two women designers at IDEO 5-6 years ago became kind of frustrated that we weren't applying this process to work for the majority of people on the earth in the developing world. So Jocelyn Wyatt and Patrice Martin just decided to begin working in the space and figure out something called IDEO.org, a nonprofit part of IDEO, a separate company now. And so this really started to take off, and people are lighter than air, as you can see here. And it's growing and growing, and it's become now, in 5 years, around 50 people. It's just remarkable. And they've done 64 projects. I was told yesterday it was 65, so it's going up and up. There's, in all sorts of worlds, agriculture, financial services, medicine, health services, youth services, on and on. So I'm going to tell a few stories in a minute. But this IDEO.org is in 23 countries, largely in Africa and India and Asia, but now the U.S. as well. And these 64 projects have been with over 100 partners in all different foundations. And foundations like this are excited to have this kind of outlet because they can't work for-profit companies. So this seems to have struck a chord. And now they started in the Bay Area, but now there's a New York office too. So it's spreading. These kind of projects start with how might we, what if, what is the future of, open-ended questions. You don't start with the answer because these are hard problems. How might we eradicate child mortality in the Congo? How might we design scalable water and hygiene businesses? How might we use technology to help farmers learn? So I'm just going to take most of my time with stories. The Unilever Foundation and this water solutions for the urban poor, how might we develop new opportunities for urban sanitation in Kumasi, Ghana? Just as a check, a geography check, Ghana is on the west coast of Africa, and it's not a pretty sight there in many cases. A very small number of homes have indoor plumbing, and sanitation is not widespread. So this design team went and immersed themselves and tried to figure out where to begin to give something more, design something on the level of what we have here in our world. So they started looking at lots of little camping toilets, and tested lots of things that were on the market and found out what worked and what didn't work. And they had some clever ideas about separating the kinds of waste. And what came out of a big design cycle was a very low-cost, kind of a bulletproof toilet that had a very easily emptied tank. And so they did some tests and found that people said they didn't want to have a service to empty the tanks, but in the end they didn't. They just dumped the tanks outside their door. So that didn't work. But they learned that they experimented with a little subscription service. They created a little team and came around a couple times a week and cleaned the toilets and emptied the tanks. And people were willing to pay a small amount for that, and a business was started. This they kind of copied some of the more successful business tactics and other services, moving services, and hired locals and created this little service to pick up the waste and convert it to power and fertilizer. And now there's a remarkable little. They started with 100 families, and they went to 500 and 1,000. And right now, there's 50 people being employed on the ground in this clean team, and they have almost 5,000 families enrolled in this service. It's really remarkable. So it's a exciting impact story. So another one is just brand new. I just learned about this in the last few weeks, so I've been practicing this little story. But how might we increase access to contraception among teens in Lusaka, Zambia? This was in conjunction with the Marie Stopes Foundation, which is known worldwide for family planning and reproductive services. But we heard over and over the team that this kind of service was really for people who already had families. And the fact of the matter is, in this city, the capital city of Zambia, 50% of all women by the time they reach 20 have had a child. 50%. So clearly some of these services were not being given to 15 to 19-year-olds, and that's what they focused on. So they immersed themselves in this age group. This was a largely women team, not entirely, and they designed lots of little prototypes around social gatherings, around nail salons, around places to have kind of conversations that were safe about contraception. And this has turned into, they did a lot of little exposed the wider team to the whole thing. So there's a little short video right now.
Okay, go. Okay. Click. It's okay, it doesn't matter.
was like to be a 15 to a 19-year-old. This was very effective. Most of these designers were in their 20s or 30s, so you quickly forget. So they also created a bunch of little prototypes to have one-on-one conversations between nurses and teenagers, and also these teen connectors. They started training people that are 18, 19, 20 years old to have conversations, to get the conversation started. And they made little kits to help nurses talk to teenagers in a different way than they were talking to older women. And they created a little campaign, a little branding campaign with a certain character associated with each type of birth control. And they created these diva centers that were just for teenagers, and so they didn't feel intimidated about going into these birth control centers that really were for older women. And what they did is they trained a bunch of 18, 19, 20-year-olds to be teen connectors, and they gave them jobs, and they're part of the whole organization now. So they have 3 clinics up and running. They've seen over 2,000 girls. They've got all sorts of take-up in their service, and there's already a 3rd one on the ground, and there's 2 in planning, and they have big plans to move this out into other urban areas in Zambia. But the neatest thing is here's 5 of their teen connectors who have jobs helping as an outreach to the community. So this looks like something that's got off to a good start, the Divine Divas. So then there's another one, planting teff in Ethiopia. How might we plant teff seed in a more sustainable way? Ethiopia is on the east coast of Africa, and they have the only thing that grows well in their clay soil is this teff seed. It's very, very fine. It's like dust. It blows away. It's almost the way people plant it now is pouring it out of bottles or just throwing it out of their bags, and it's very difficult. And a lot of it doesn't germinate, or birds eat it. So people have attempted to use machines to plant it, but most of them just don't work because they were designed for other conditions. So we had a team go there and look carefully at all the things that a machine might need if it was to be successful in this environment. And they went in and they saw that in the rainy season, you sink up to your knees in this mud, and in the dry season, it's like concrete. So how could we use the existing supplies of fertilizer and seed and create something that would help people distribute these seeds in a better way? They did some tests, and if you plant them in rows, you can use 10% of the seeds and you get double the yield. So this team came back and started prototyping, making things to experiment and test, and came up with this planter over time, this 4-row planter, and went back to Ethiopia and went into the fields and tested and found out what didn't work, and found out quite a few things that didn't work. So they had to come back, and one of the biggest challenges was everything in the muddy season would sink in. This mud would cake everything. It was one of the biggest showstoppers. But one of the coolest things came out of this is they had a farmer came in and said, I think I know how to fix this. And he created this out of bicycle wheels, this very wide wheel, and then he put burlap around it. And when that was in use, the mud would just kind of peel off of it, and the thing would float over the mud. It was just brilliant, and so that's what now exists. So this saves time, effort, and manpower and yield. Now there's about a dozen or 20 in the field being tested right now, so it's somewhat early, and there's a lot of challenges in this society, but this looks like it may have some hope as well. Another story, the Global Alliance for Clean Cookstoves. How might we increase the demand for and use of cookstoves, cleaner cookstoves in Tanzania? And as you well, around the world, about 3 billion people cook their food over open fires with mostly wood, and that that translates to 4 to 5 million women a year dying from respiratory diseases and cancer and having all sorts of other complications because they're breathing smoke in all day in and day out around the year round. And so trying to understand by focusing on one city, one area in Tanzania, what people's practices were, what their family life was like, immersing yourself in this kind of an everyday life to see how people acted. And there's wood, there's charcoal, there's fuel, there's gasoline. So they started to understand how to what the stoves were like, very low cost and not very well designed. And they decided to try to design some that were better in quality and had subscription services for fuel. So and they started to market them in the same way that people had an aspiration to own a nicer thing like a light or a television or a stereo. And they call this fuel ladder, trying to get people to move up the fuel ladder to charcoal and then to liquid fuels so that there'd be less and less smoke and people weren't stripping their forest of wood. And so there's ideas around making a more durable kind of stove that had inserts that would wear out. And having these subscription services that cost just a small amount every week so that the fuel would show up and you wouldn't have to go foraging for it. And again, selling these alongside things that were nicer, a better design, and selling. And then this one thing, it didn't appeal to them that this was a much safer thing. You can't think that far in the future, like I might get cancer, or I might get a respiratory disease. But if you appeal to, like, if you use these, you could cook in your best dress. This turns out to be a home run from a marketing standpoint. You're not all smoky when you're trying to have guests over. So here's a neat. Summary, things that I've seen, learned by watching them, immerse design teams with the users, learn from quickie quick and scrappy prototypes, look at other local industries for inspiration, and start these projects in a specific region, in a city, and then enable businesses and entrepreneurs that are sustainable. And last recommendation, developing world really needs you and your creativity. So look for opportunities to use design thinking and contribute something, or join something, or even start something. Thank you very much.